This, okay? The people want to hear about other sports, so I am acquiescing
That's what I
to
like.
this. Okay, I am acquiescing, and if they want to hear about tennis, so be it.
And you know they do.
Of course, I'm sure they do. They're super excited.
I think when they said they wanted to hear about other sports, I think they mostly specifically meant tennis.
Yeah, of course, specifically. But don't you
Mhm.
worry, because I got a cycling person coming. You know.
Really?
Oh yeah, 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 yeah.
Okay.
I'm all in. Okay.
I like it.
And then with the help of Chat GPT,
Okay.
I've had a couple of questions set up and everything ready to go. You know what I mean? I got it here
Yeah,
on my remarkable tablet that I use now for interviewing and things like that. So,
I love it.
you know, I'm
Oh,
trying to come up in life, okay? I'm trying to come up in
right.
life.
I can tell you going stepping up to tennis. That's the real giveaway right there.
Yeah, well,
Yeah.
you know what I mean? So, this is what we do. This is what
Right.
we do.
And like you said too, it's the Australian Open's going on, so it's a good time.
Exactly. So, exactly. So, all right. So, you ready to go?
Yes, sir.
All right, all right. Well, welcome everybody to the DHC podcast. My name is Ed, and get ready, everybody. Get ready because this is the the episode many people are not going to see coming. This is a very surprising episode for me. Uh, with me, I have a good friend, fellow podcaster, Mr. Mike Sellers. I will ask you here in a second to talk about your podcast here, but uh, how you been, my friend? How is everything? How is everything going with you?
Other than the extremely terrible weather I'm going through right here in Ohio right now, it's going good.
I was in Ohio a couple of weeks ago,
Were you?
last week actually. Yes, at the time of this recording. Yeah,
Okay.
it was not fun. So you
I
know,
mean, yeah, it's from what I understand, is it sounds like Ohio is not exclusive to this terrible weather across the country
nope.
right now, but it is
Nope, nope,
terrible right now.
nope. We had some snow and everything here in North Carolina, so whatever. All right, but before we continue, guys, I want to make sure that you guys are always in the know. So make sure to go to the YouTube channel because I am recording this one as a video as well. So it will be on the YouTube channel, that had Chronicles. Make sure you subscribe and you like this episode wherever you get your podcast, so that way you guys are always in the know. And then make sure you tell one more person about it. All right, now that we got the business out of the way, are you ready?
I'm very ready. Ever since you asked me about this, I'm like, I haven't been this excited for an interview in a long time.
All right. So the topic of this episode tonight is going to be tennis. That's
You heard
right.
that right.
You heard that right, everybody. It is tennis. The reason I wanted to talk about tennis because for years now, you and me we've been going back and forth about the sport and everything.
Mhm.
And then, what better person to teach me the sport from a high level, right? Obviously, none of us can play. It is what it is. But
Right.
you watch a lot more tennis than I do. You
Mhm.
are, pretty much educated when it comes to that. So I have a set of questions. Okay. So here's what happened. I ended up going on ChatGPT and I was like, ChatGPT, set a set of questions for me to ask someone about the sport of tennis. And you know what? Obviously, I made some modifications to this list, but I like these questions. So I'm going to ask these questions and then we're going to have a conversation about this. And let's see how this goes because we have no idea.
Right.
But
Right.
here we go. All
I'm
right.
ready. Yeah.
All right.
Lucky.
So first of all, I want to know. My question to you is, as a fan of the sport, like, what
Mhm.
got you interested in tennis? Like, why?
So yeah, that's a good question because um, like the more common sports like obviously football, baseball, basketball is just more
Right.
what I grew up watching. But my dad, he was just like a fan of every sport to some degree.
Hmm.
So just whatever the season was, there would just be a little bit of that on TV. Again, obviously the major sports far more, but when there's the Indy 500 for racing, we'd be watching it. If there was,
Hmm.
the Masters and golf, like some of the bigger events like this, so to speak, it would be on TV. Typically, we weren't as into it and stuff like that. But for some reason, when the tennis was on, I just liked it a lot more than the other lesser known sports.
You just gravitated towards that, huh?
Yeah, that's the word I was looking for. And then for whatever reason too, we watched it a little bit, like I said, growing up, but it was when I was about 12 or 13. And this seems like something I'm just making up because of the way it turned out, but it's true story. One of the first tournaments when I was really getting focused in on it was Wimbledon 2003. And I decided that while I was watching it, one of the guys in there I started really liking, and that guy's name was Roger Federer. And that tournament, yeah. And that guy, he won the tournament, was his first Grand Slam title. So the fact that I then started, had a not just interest in the sport, but started actually having a specific person to root for. And then that was right when he was taken off. So the fact that he was so good too, obviously gave me even more of a rooting interest. And so yeah, just slowly grew from there. And then two of my brothers both started watching it a little more as I watched a little more. And then over time, one of them became a fan of Nadal. The other one became a fan of Djokovic. So we had this whole sibling rivalry going too, of our favorite players all going back and forth. So whenever they played, there was that added, rivalry going on in our household too. So
that's your player. That was your favorite player.
Yeah, Federer.
Okay, that's awesome, dude. Yeah, I like it.
Thank you. I
like it. All right. And listen, I'm not someone who it's gonna be like, oh, I just mess with you, to be honest with you. Like, I really don't hate any sport. I'll watch anything.
Yeah.
Coco Gauff, like, I mean, the girl's like, obviously at the time of this recording, the Australian Open is going on. She made a lot of mistakes from what I understand, eliminated, and no longer, participating in the Australian Open. Do I get that right?
You got that right. And she did make it to I think it was the quarterfinals where she got eliminated too. So she still had a pretty good tournament. She just lost a little sooner than she was
expected.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. So let's talk about someone. And again, I'm not going to pretend that I'm an expert in this sport. I am obviously am not. I am what you called a novice in the sport. So I want you to teach me here. What are some of the basic rules that I, as a fan of tennis, should know?
I think if you're starting to like tennis, the first basic thing you need to learn is the scoring system, because it's so much different than any other sport.
Okay.
And I like it because, it takes a little bit of time to learn it because it can be a little confusing. But before I get into what the specifics of the scoring system are, what I like about it is, unlike most sports, it's like you're never out of it. You can say the same for baseball because there's no time, but this is even more than baseball, because baseball, you still only have so many chances because there's still 27 outs, all that stuff. So if the team's got a large lead, they could not play well the last couple innings themselves and still just hang on to win. But in tennis, you're basically playing to a score. Okay. So even if someone is winning by a lot, they still have to keep scoring more points to actually finish it off. So a large lead is never completely safe, which is one thing I like about it. And the way it kind of breaks down, it also, some points, even though every point is technically worth the same amount, it kind of gets to a certain point where some points are more valuable than others, where you could be 1 or 2 points away from getting a huge lead or the other person completely tying the match. So how I'll get into that is there's so basically there are slight differences between men and women. In the scoring. The only difference in the scoring is men will sometimes play best of 5 sets. Women always 100% of the time is just best of 3 sets.
Why is that?
Because stamina. Because the men can have more stamina. They can, because these 5-set matches it's not rare for it to take 3 or 4 hours. It sometimes takes 5 and 6 hours.
I think the longest tennis match has been 11 hours, I believe it was.
So. It was, yeah. And they changed the rules since then to basically get where you basically can't have that long of a match before again. And I'll explain that in a minute, what they've changed. But so that's the only real differences between the men and women is
up to 5 for men sets.
Yeah.
And
best of 5.
And best of and 3
for women, correct.
Okay. All right.
And because of the additional time, even the men only do the best of 5 in these Grand Slam events like the Australian Open, French Open, Wimbledon, and US Open. So when it's any of the other tournaments, even the men are only doing best of 3.
Okay.
So that's the first thing. You got to win 2 sets. Again, in the best of 3. I'm just going to, now I got that out of the way, I'm just going to go off of it being best of 3. So you got to win 2 sets. And to win a set, you've got to win 6 games. And to win a game, you got to win 4 points. So that's the very simplistic version of it. But a single game is when you got to win the 4 points. But when you score, starts out as 0-0, but they call it love. And then the first point.
So 0-0 is love.
Correct. Anything with a 0 in tennis, they refer to as love.
Okay.
So let's just say we're playing the first point of the match. The game's just started. It's love. And someone scores a point. It's not 1-0. It's 15 to love.
Okay. 15 love. Okay.
15 love. Then the person gets another point. It's 30 love. They get the third point. It's 40 love. And then if they get that 4th point, they win the game. And now it's 1-0 in the set.
Okay. Time out.
Okay.
Because we going. The first point you get is 15. Then you double it up 30. That's 2 points. And then instead of going to 45, you're going to go to 40.
Yeah, exactly. What? So and from what I can gather, they don't even know for a fact the reasoning for that, but I've heard 2 schools of thought.
Okay.
One of them is that it was originally 15, 30, 45, but that the people that were playing it, whenever they were like just saying out loud what the score was, they would just verbally were shortening the 45 to 40 because just to save time or whatever, and that they eventually just cut it to 40. But what I believe is the more likely option is that when tennis started, they said they kept score by using like a clock. So they would you score 1 point, they would move it to the 15. You score another point, you move it to the 30, then the 45, and when you get to the top, 60, you score. But here's the reason why it would change to 40 instead of 45. Because if both people get to 40 before anyone gets that 4th point, then they call it deuce. You have to win by 2 points.
Okay.
So it could be an unlimited amount. You could play 100 points. You have to win by 2.
So 41, 42.
No, it's just 40-40, and then it's advantage. Like if we're playing and I get the first point, it's advantage Schellers. And if you tie it up, it's just deuce again.
Man, listen. Okay.
So that being the case, again, imagining you're keeping score on this clock, they switched it supposedly to where you're at 40, and then if you get the advantage, they just move it by 10. So all of a sudden, they move it up to the 50. If it's a tie again, they just bring it back to 40. But then, because obviously otherwise you go overboard. So that's a couple of variations I've heard of why they do it that way. But get past the reasoning, once you win by 2, once you get at least 4 points and win by 2, then you're up 1-0 in the 1-0 games in the set. Now you play to 6 games, but similarly, if you get to 5-5, you got to win by 2 as well, right? But because this is a lot more than just individual points, it would take a lot longer to win by 2 games. So if you both get to 6, then they do what they call a tiebreak. And then you got to score 7 points. Still got to win by 2. But whoever gets to 7 points and wins by 2 wins the set. Now, if it's the final set, so the 3rd set of a best of 3 or the 5th set of a best of 5, they play the tiebreak to 10 points instead of 7, just to extend it a little bit. But that's the rule change. And that's the rule change I was talking about a little bit earlier, because it used to be in that 5th set, they just didn't do that tiebreak at all. They just said you had to win by 2 games, period. So that longest match ever went to 70-68 in the 5th and deciding match. And that's not points, that's games, which are at least 4 points per game. So that match took 3 days and 11 hours. So you can see why that's technically it could happen, because it's still unlimited points theoretically that someone could score, but extremely unlikely now that it could ever get that high.
That's a
Got all
why
that?
do they confuse it? Why do they make it so confusing?
That's a good question. But once you do get it down, like I said, the scoring is great because it's since it's by sets, it's almost like a World Series. Now you can have one terrible game, but it's still just 1-0. So there's that. And what I like is then if it gets into the tiebreak, like I was talking, where you got to win, got to get 7 points and win by 2.
Yeah.
Like let's say I'm already down 1-0, and we're playing, and it's 6-6 in the tiebreak.
Mm-hmm.
Well, if you score the next point, all of a sudden you're now one single point away from winning the whole match. But if I won that point instead, I'm 1 point away from breaking it completely even. So that's where it's like technically all these points are equal, but when you get in situations like that, the pressures mounts so much, and that's why you truly are never actually out of it.
This is wild.
It is wild. I remember when I was watching it as a kid, like I said, I would kind of casually watch it. My mom, she would, if it was the championship match, especially if it was Federer versus Nadal, she would sit down and kind of watch it with us. But that was about the only situation. So every time we'd have to explain all these rules to her, and then she wouldn't watch it again for a long time. So she would get it, but then she wouldn't watch it again for a long time. So when it came down, a year later, whenever we'd watch it, we'd have to explain it to her again. And
well, yeah, dude, like that's a lot, bro.
It is. I'm a little exhausted just from explaining it.
Yeah, I mean, we're almost 20 minutes in, and then you've already lost me with the scoring. I mean, we haven't even talked about differences between singles and doubles. What's the proper way of swinging the tennis racket? When you're serving and how you settle that. Man, listen.
Yeah, and even that was probably a pretty fairly summed up version of. I mean, that was the rules, but I was still even felt like I was even kind of rushing through it a little bit. How
long did it take you to learn all these rules?
The scoring specifically, or everything else?
Yeah, the scoring.
Not as long as you would think. I mean, I guess it took probably a lot longer to get to some of those specifics as far as like, well, if it's the 5th set, you go to 10, and why they call it 15, 30, 40. That stuff took years, yeah, for sure. But the basics of 15, 30, 40 love, or love 15, 30, 40.
Yeah.
Win 6 games, win a set to set, 2 or 3 sets to win. That stuff was, if you're actually watching a match, you can get that part pretty fast if you're paying attention.
Okay. Let me ask you this.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So there's, obviously we're going to go with the generalized version of, not the grand slams or anything like that, but set a best of 3, right?
Okay. Yep.
How many, not like the 15-30, but like how many actual points in order to win the set?
If like you never get, the bare minimum, basically.
Yeah.
So if you get if you won every single point, basically, you would only need 24 points to win a set.
Okay.
But that's assuming you win every game. It's assuming none of those games go to deuce.
All right. So you got 1 point, right, to win a game. What's that?
4 points to win a game, 6 games to win a set.
Okay. So technically, 1 point equals 1 game.
4 points equals 1 game.
All right. So 1 game,
mm-hmm.
1 point. Okay.
4 points, 1 game.
No. Okay. But I'm talking about like, that you got the 1, 2, 3 best of.
Okay. So you're talking about game. 3. Like you're saying yeah. So each set, it consists of games. Each game consists of points. So the set that you have to win 6 of, you have to win 6 games.
You're giving me a headache already, bro.
That's why you heard the term your game set match, right?
Yeah.
Obviously, that's where it comes from. So the umpire, every time someone wins a game.
All right. So you got the 1, the 2, and the 3, right?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Yeah.
So how do you determine who wins that first one and then second one and third one? By how many
games?
I'm probably gonna get this wrong. How many games?
Correct. Whoever gets 6 games.
All right. The first to get to 6 is the one who wins 1.
Correct. Unless, like I said, you both get to 5, then you gotta get to 7. But
because you gotta win by 2.
Yeah. But if you both get to 6, then that's when you go with the tiebreak. So you could win 7-6 in a set.
The tiebreaker. Okay, gotcha. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. So, but you got to win best of 3.
Yep. So if you win the first 2, it's just over. You don't have to play the third.
Yeah. Got it. Okay. All right. I thought that, there was like soccer was confusing, on the lines, or hockey on the blue line, red line, like that took me a little bit to understand, but I got it really quickly. Like lacrosse is easy to understand, football is easy to understand, baseball is easy to understand. Tennis, Jesus, y'all took the cake when it comes to the scoring system and just making it just so complicated.
Well, that's why I say that's the first thing you got to learn. 'Cause at least in all the other sports, for the most part, you might not know how they score exactly, but a higher score is better, at least.
Right.
Yeah. So this, it's not even this.
Mama Jama. God, oh Lord.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly.
Okay. All right. Okay. So we got that part. We got the scoring. Okay. Now I'm moving on. We're going to go to watch a match.
Okay.
All right. There's a bunch of lines on the field, on the court.
Correct.
Okay. Talk to me about that.
Okay. Well, it will be a little bit more difficult to kind of explain it without having
Yeah.
here. But
for those of you that are watching or even listening to this, pull up a sketch of the tennis court, and then we'll go from there.
Exactly. So basically, so each side has a rectangle. It's not entirely square, but it's a rectangle.
Mm-hmm.
So like if I'm standing at the end of the court and I'm looking towards the opponent.
Yep.
So from that direction, there'll be a line right down the middle.
Yep.
And then
if I'm on the left,
if I'm serving on the right, then you've got to be receiving on the left.
Okay.
And it switches every other point. So if I serve on the right, the next point I'll be serving from the left, and the receiver has to
move to the other side
as well. Correct.
The opposite of you.
Correct. And so on my own specific half of the court, there, like I said, there's a line down the middle. So the half that's closer to me is just that one square. Again, not actually square, rectangle.
Rectangle,
no individual lines in between there. But the half that's closer to the net, there will be another line just split down the middle the opposite way. So left and right. So if I'm serving to the other side of the net, I have to get it. Again, if I'm on the right side and I have to serve it to the left side of that line, but on the closer half to the net. So there's basically a quarter of your entire side of the court that I have to serve it into.
Okay.
And what side it is, left or right, so you're prepared for it that way. And after I serve it, at that point, both of us can hit it wherever we want after the serve.
Doesn't matter. You don't have to hit it diagonally. It's only when you serve that you have to hit it.
Correct.
On the other side.
Correct.
Other line.
From then on, it's just free for all. Now, when we might get into this a little bit later, but as far as there's also an additional line extending the court wider, not longer, but wider on both sides. You'll see those courts even when they're playing singles, but those are only used for when doubles, basically just making the court larger. That's all that's for. Okay. But a little known fact that most people don't know unless you follow it pretty closely is the serve has to be the way I just explained it. But after that point, people don't actually have to hit it over the net. Now, the net covers that whole box, so it's almost impossible.
Wait. You don't have to hit it over the net?
You don't have to, no. So
where the hell are you going to hit it?
Well, 99.99999% of the time, you would have to hit it over the net to get it over, correct?
Okay.
But there's these extremely rare times where, like, player A will hit it so far onto the right side or left or whatever, right side, like just barely on the line, but it's in. And then player B has to run so far from the other way to get to there that if he still gets to the ball, he's way beyond the net at this point. So if he
as long as he gets it on the court.
Correct. So he can hit it around the net and that side. And as long as it lands in the court, it's live still. Again, that's almost impossible to do because A, the opportunity doesn't present itself very often, and B, it's just hard to do even when it does. But I've seen it a few times.
Oh, God.
You also can't touch the net. So these times when player A bloops it over the net just a little bit, and you have to run and charge just to get to it. If you succeed and get to the ball, but you just go a little too far and you put your hand on the net, you lose.
But the ball can touch the net.
The ball can touch the net, correct, but not on the serve.
No,
if
it can be while you're playing, not on the serve.
Right. If it hits the net on the serve,
it's a point to the other player.
Not necessarily.
Or 15.
Not what? So if it's a person serving for the first time and they don't get it in that box, then it's a fault, and they get one do-over basically. If they fail again, then it's a point. It's 15 for the other person. But if it hits the net and doesn't land in the box, then it's still just the same kind of fault. But if it hits the net and does land in the box, it's not a fault and it's not good. They call it a let, and it's basically just a do-over, but it's still your first serve.
Why you guys why are you guys complicating the bologna sandwich here?
I didn't make the rules. I just enjoy them.
Yeah, well, no kidding. I have a headache already.
It's a lot to, like, for me.
It's a lot to digest.
Yeah, especially
when it
just
comes to this sport, dude. Right. Like, I mean, sweet mother of God. I thought that, like I said, like, you know, a lot of people's like, oh my God, baseball's so complicated with so many rules. No, man, it's not.
I mean, yeah, I feel like every sport to some degree, depending on how detailed you get, and
like how far down in the weeds you get into it. But like, sweet Lord, like, what in the God's green earth? Like, why?
Right, for sure. And yeah, but again, there's a beauty to it because, like I said, it's not only to the point that you have to keep scoring points, even if you got a huge lead, you have to keep scoring points to win. And then, like I said, there's those scenarios where 1 or 2 points could end the match or completely tie it and stuff.
Okay. All right. I mean, listen, I get it. And, you know, not really, but I get it. But that's a lot. All right. Okay. Okay. So we went over that. We went over the court. Is there, obviously, like, for example, in football, in baseball, in basketball, there is a set uniform that you have to wear. In tennis, is there a uniform?
No. Now, I'm sure there are, just some sort of like decency stuff that you have to wear and stuff like that.
Obviously.
But other than that, the only ever like specific rule on the uniform I've heard is that at Wimbledon in London, the players always have to wear white. Like, that's just a court rule. So
how far does that rule go?
How far back, or you mean like how strict?
Yeah, how far back? Yeah.
They've been playing the tournament for about 150 years. I think it's always been that way. Yeah.
Okay. And then also, how serious do they get with that?
Oh, very serious. There have been times where, like, if you like, because sometimes these players will be wearing T-shirts or whatever underneath their uniform, and sometimes they have been bright colors or whatever. And if that was the case and they could be seen, they would get fined. Now, they've relaxed on that part of it the last couple of years, as long as like the actual outside outfit is white. But now I will say, though, they at least will, all these players have sponsorships, deals and stuff. Now, 99% of them are literally just wearing the Nike logo or the Adidas logo or whatever. That can be red, blue, whatever.
As long as the full shirt is, and the pants are white.
Correct.
It's because of the purity of the sport.
I'm sure. And again, it's England. Yeah, they're a little fancier than we are here in America.
Sure. Okay, let's go with that.
But as far as I'm aware, it's not like it's every other place can wear whatever colors and whatever types of uniforms, but not the All England club.
All right. A lot of people are enjoying this conversation right now. Like, I feel like such a fish out of water right now.
I get it. Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like,
Yeah,
like
I
I've
mean,
watched it before and all that, and I've always wondered, like, what are the rules? Like, why did they do that? And I mean,
mhm.
listen, some of these guys are super strong, and the way that ball comes out of that racket, right?
Oh
And
man,
it's literally a rocket.
yeah,
Uh, so it's just
for sure. And yeah, I mean, I'm still always learning stuff as I'm watching it too. Like there's, like you said earlier, I don't play it, so there's a lot of like those types of techniques that I don't know much about, but I know like from watching it, these players will have 5 rackets they bring, and if one of them is not playing well, they'll say things like, "Well, they're going to switch the racket to get tighter strings for more power," or things like that. But I still haven't got down pat all what the tighter strings mean or looser strings or whatever. But I do
mhm,
know they have different things like that where they'll switch the rackets depending on how they're playing for different reasons like that.
interesting. So racket plays a huge part.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. It's the
Depend on like the way the tightness of the strings
strings,
on the racket.
correct. Yeah. I'm sure that I can't imagine there's a wide range of how loose and tight you can get it, but from what I gather just from watching it, it can
Okay.
can play a decent difference still.
Okay. All right. So what's the difference between singles and doubles?
So the first biggest thing, obviously, is kind of what we talked about earlier, where the court is actually wider. Obviously, they're
Yeah.
playing on the same court, but there's
Yeah.
those
Sure. Sure. Sure.
additional
Sure.
lines. Um, excuse me. That's obviously the first biggest thing. And they So I don't follow the doubles nearly as close. So could get some of these details wrong, but from what I do
Great.
gather,
Great. Here we go.
but not too in depth.
Speculation town. Here we go.
Not,
Population Mike.
they're not extremely detailed, so I'm pretty confident in these couple of things. It's just not as much
Yeah,
information.
I got,
But
I got you.
for example, let's say uh, me and you are on the same team playing doubles against uh, Patrick and Donnie, for example.
Oh, that'll be a good one. Here we go. We got to be
Right?
careful because Donnie, is a
Right.
senior citizen. We don't want him to break his kneecap or something.
We'll take it easy on him.
Sorry,
Um,
Donnie. Love you.
so if it's our turn to serve and it's my turn to serve,
Okay.
then me and you will still go left and right on the court, taking turns like normal. Correct. But Patrick and Donnie, they're staying on the same side.
No
So
matter
I'd
what.
be serving, yeah. So I'll serve first point to Patrick or whatever, and then I'll be serving the next point to Donnie. So it'll rotate in that way. Now
Okay. Okay.
they as receivers, whoever's receiving the serve will
Yeah.
be back behind the line. Whoever's not receiving the serve will be close to the net.
Okay.
So is that set up? And then the one other thing, which I think this has not been going on for super long, but um, when you get to the scoring, if
Oh God.
yeah, if each team wins one set, rather than playing a third entire set, they just go straight to the 10-point tiebreak. So basically, one set each. Then we just play best of 10 points, but got to win by 2 to finish it off. Yeah. Which kind of, I think the main point with that is I think they all know that singles is where it's at as far as like popularity and things like that.
They just want to end it quick.
I kind of think that's the case. But
Yeah. I was
it's
like, let's just get this done.
right. But it's also kind of ironic because you should have far more energy left when you're playing doubles.
Bro,
So
100%. Yeah.
so you think it'd almost be the other way around, that if you're playing singles, they'll limit the action, but no.
Okay. All right. Oh, well, guys, I just want you guys to know that this is truly an episode of the Data Hack Chronicles podcast. I am learning tennis. How effective this is going to be is yet to be determined because there's a lot of rules into this game. So, but before we continue, guys, make sure that you guys are signing up to the podcast wherever you are listening. Make sure you hit the like button as well as the subscribe button. Make sure you also follow my good friend here, Mike. He's on all socials. And then, yeah. All right, Mike. So, so what are the 4 Grand Slam tournaments?
There is the Australian Open in Melbourne or Melbourne. That's what's going on right now.
Yep, at the time of this recording. Okay.
Correct. Yeah. So mid to late January is when they do that,
Okay.
and all of them last 2 weeks. All the majors, not every tournament period,
Yeah.
but all these majors / Grand Slams. That's the first one, and that's played on hard court surface. I don't know how close you pay attention, but there's multiple different types of surfaces on the courts.
Here we go.
So we can get into that in a minute if you want.
Yeah.
But then there's the French Open. That is obviously in France, in Paris. That is it's around Memorial Day, and that is played on clay, red clay. And then around Independence Day, ironically, is in England, the Wimbledon, and that is played on grass. And then finally around Labor Day here in America, in New York, is the U.S. Open, which is also on hard court.
Okay, so there's grass, there's clay, there's hard surface.
Correct. So there is technically, they have a couple other things, like they have carpet and they have some like indoor hard court, outdoor hard court, but you never see those. It's basically just the 3: grass, hard court, and clay.
Okay.
So from just a viewer's standpoint, the only difference you notice is the color of the court. But in reality, there's differences in the speed of the ball, how high it bounces, the spins on the ball for each surface. And so when you follow it closely enough, over time, you'll learn that certain players can be way better or way worse on certain surfaces, just depending on their style of play.
Okay.
So like a grass court, that's more for the players that are like aggressive because the ball moves faster. That's like the fastest
on the grass.
Yeah. It's it's fastest on grass, then on hard court, and slowest on clay. And the
I would have thought that would have been a hard surface that would have been the fastest.
I agree. It seems like that would be. Now it is on the hard surfaces, the ball bounces higher, and then on the grass it bounces lowest. So clay's in between. And then there's things too, like hard court and the grass, but especially the hard court, you can't really slide much. Like if you're going left to right, you just can't slide too much. But on clay, you can slide really far. So again, depending on your style of play, exactly like Rafael Nadal, if you're watching him, he's sliding left and right and stuff. That's why he's always winning the French Open, which is on clay. So yeah, there's different styles of play, and just some fit others better. So like I said, if you watch it, if you follow it closely, you do learn over time, like this player always wins on clay, but can't win on grass at all or whatever. And hard court is kind of like the neutral, almost like, some people are better on hard court than the others, but I think that's more a matter of being worse on the others.
I got you. Okay, so I'm gonna ask this knowing that there's gonna be some crazy cockamamie answer, okay. Not from you, but just overall because tennis.
Right.
All right. We've already talked about the different kinds of surfaces. Okay. Now, is there, based on each surface, is there a specific kind of tennis ball, or is it pretty much the same tennis ball?
I've never heard of a difference in the tennis ball, so I believe it's always the same kind of tennis ball.
I am surprised.
Right.
I'm surprised.
Now, I will say they changed the tennis balls. I think it's like every 6 games or so. At a certain amount of the times, they will get a fresh set of tennis balls. So in the middle of an individual match, you will see them talking about the differences between like, these fresh balls and the ones are getting older and stuff. But
oh god. Okay. Yep. No. Continue.
But yeah, it's not. To my knowledge, there's not different kinds for different surfaces or anything like that.
All right. Okay. Is there a difference in tennis rackets for each player?
Similar to like we're talking about, like their clothing styles, they'll have deals with different manufacturers. So some people will have their own brand and every brands could be slightly different, but it's not a matter of just like, oh, there's exactly 3 styles of rackets and it's always A, B, or C. It's just the same general setting, but different brands. And like we said, sometimes they'll have tighter strings, looser strings, which can make some differences.
So that's where you see the difference. It's the tighter strings on the racket. Also, I'm sure it could play a huge advantage or disadvantage if you're using them, depending also on the court. Correct?
Oh, for sure. And you'll even see like the grip they have. Like I don't know if you ever you can see like in just a store at Walmart or whatever, that if you're in the
I do.
second, they have like that wrap, like the tape, almost like you can wrap around the grips. So the grips can vary slightly. More than anything, I think it's just a matter of being worn out or fresh as well. But you'll see
or
them
sweaty or whatever.
Right. But you'll see them similarly, retaping that and stuff. And even the actual part of the racket, it's all the same basic shape. But again, some are, slightly more narrow, slightly fatter, whatever you want to call it. So there's slight differences like that as well.
I mean, wow. That's a lot.
For sure.
That's a lot to digest.
Yeah.
All right. What's between the difference ATP, I think, or WTA?
Yeah. That's just literally the men's and the women's.
That's it.
Yeah. The WTA is obviously the women's, and the ATP. There's been some talk for years. They're run completely independent of each other. Now they still play the major Grand Slams at the same times. There's a handful of other tournaments that they play at the same time as well, but it's not completely the same. Like, other than the Grand Slams and like I said, a handful of other tournaments, the women could be playing in Madrid one week while the men are playing in Atlanta or whatever. And but there's been some talk of them like merging to be run by the same organization. I don't know if that would necessarily mean the same schedule, because speaking of those tournaments, something we haven't mentioned yet is there's 4 levels of tournaments.
I'm sorry, what?
4 levels of tournaments.
Why? For
ranking points and money. So as you're probably aware, both of these have rankings, right?
Of course.
So there's number 1 player in the world, number 2 player in the world, stuff like that.
Yep.
But it's not like college football where it's just people are voting on who they think's the best. There's an actual system of.
I'm sure it's very complicated.
I mean, without getting too specific, it's as you would expect. You get to the championship, you get the most points.
Of course.
Runner up a little less, etc. But the 4 different levels of tournaments is where that varies. So there's the majors, which is the Grand Slams.
Okay.
You win the championship, it's worth 2,000 points.
Why this ridiculous number?
Well, like, makes sense. Well, when you hear the other ones, it kind of makes sense. So there's those ones are the most important.
Okay.
But keep in mind, like your runner up, it's worth like 1,300. Semifinals, 780, etc. So everything's to scale roughly. Then there's the 1,000 events they call, which, as you can probably guess, you win 1,000 points for
winning the tournament. Okay.
Yeah. And then there's the next tier, which is the 500 events. And guess how many points you win for?
I'm gonna go on a limb here. Say 500.
Good guess. You win.
Oh my God! Look at me.
And then
I'm finally tennis.
Right? And then finally, there's the 250 events. So basically, you'll see these top players, the players that are the top 10 in the world and stuff. Everybody's playing every Grand Slam if they're good enough to make it. And almost everybody's playing every one of the 1,000 events, which is like 9 of. But the 500s and the 250s, the top players will not play 250s unless they're just coming back from injury and need time.
And they don't really care.
Right. They'll play some 500s and stuff. But of course, everybody needs some breaks too, because tennis season goes from New Year's through to the beginning of November.
Why? Why such a long?
Well, that's what I was gonna say. Though, is you can play like your own schedule. I mean, you can if you want to take a month off, you can take the month off. So obviously, people are going to take some weeks off here and there at least. But
Yeah,
because the
yeah,
schedule
yeah,
is
yeah, yeah.
so long, you're going to need some breaks at least.
Okay.
Yeah.
Uh, y'all just trying to complicate the bologna sandwich up in here. That's what I understand.
And succeeding.
Yep. 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 Okay. 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 I mean, I get it. And they are okay.
Mm-hmm. And yeah, to the point of the rankings.
Yes, please.
Obviously, accumulate all the points for rankings, and it's a rolling. It's a rolling 52-week system.
Oh, okay.
So it's not just like it doesn't restart on January 1st. It's just literally constantly the last 52 weeks. So basically, all the points people earn in the Australian Open right now, they'll get it, but then they'll take away everything they earned from last year's Australian Open. If that makes sense.
Sure. Let's go with that.
All right.
Again, complicating things. I don't understand why you guys are trying to complicate things. That's you know what I mean? Just I don't get it. I don't get it.
You got to have rankings, you know. I mean, otherwise, what's this all
No,
about?
I'm with you on the rankings. I'm not disagreeing you there, but sweet mother of all baby Jesus, you know.
Well, how would you do it? Would you be like an AP style poll and you just rank them every week?
Yeah, rank them every week.
All 1,000 players on each side?
No, man, I know. I'm messing with you.
Okay.
There has to be a ranking system. Yes, it's just the
Mhm.
2,000 points and then all that. It's like, you could just make it less points and still be effective. When it comes to that, like you really could.
You could, but for example, in the Grand Slam, obviously we won't have to get into it, but every tournament has different sizes. You know, it's not always a standard 32 people in the field or whatever. And for the most part, the larger tournaments have larger fields. So these majors, they have 128 people field. So
because why not?
Right. So if you lose in the first round, you're only getting 10 points. So as you can imagine, it's a huge difference going all the way to the championship. So maybe 2,000 isn't the exact right number, but it needs to be significantly better than just 10.
Okay. I asked for this. I just want you to know that. I want the audience to know that I asked for this.
Yes, I appreciate you saying that.
And I look like deer in headlights right now if you guys are watching it on the YouTube channel, because my God, that's so much. There's so much.
It is a lot. But to be fair, we've also covered, it's not like we just covered the rules of the match. We also have covered some styles of play, some season-long rules.
Obviously. Okay, so let me ask you this. You are a fan. You've actually been watching it for quite a long time.
Correct.
I guess over 20 years now.
About 20 years of watching it at least casually, and probably 10 plus years of watching it pretty darn closely.
Because I'm sure right now there's some, you are itching to find out what's going on in the Australian Open.
Normally, I would say 100%, but the Australian Open is a little more difficult because it's in Australia.
Yep.
So the time zone difference is massive. And because of the point of the tournament we're at right now, we're down to the semifinals in each one. So no matches even start till 3:30 a.m. Eastern time. So there's no matches going on right now.
Nope.
Otherwise,
what I'm doing at 3:30 in the morning? Not watching that.
I will admit, depending on what the matches are, there have been some times when I'll set my alarm to get in the middle of the night to watch this. It's not the norm, but I've done it. Now
good for you. I mean, listen, you gotta be in an immense amount of shape in order to play tennis.
Oh, yeah, because not only just the nature of the sport itself, but it's 90% of the time you're in the brutal sun.
Yeah, it's physically demanding,
and you're doing it all by yourself. And like we discussed, it's not often that the matches go 4 or 5 hours, but it's not rare, and it is often they go at least 2 or 3 hours of all this.
And the coach cannot be there next to you.
Right. Now they have loosened up on some rules with that. It used to be that the coaches had to be in the stands and that you could do no coaching during the match. Then they relaxed it a little bit where you can do coaching during the match. And then literally just this year, they've allowed it where the player or the coach can be like obviously not on the court or not in the right with the players, but right very very close to where in between points, or at least during the breaks, you could easily talk to them if you wanted to. But
Okay.
But
I've always wondered that because I always see that, like, they're all the way up in the stands, and they're like, okay, you did all the coaching and all the training, you're on your own.
Right. And still, for the most part, even with these new rules, first of all, some people are choosing not to be right next to them. So some of the players' coaches still are up in the stands.
Yeah.
But even the ones that are getting closer, they're still far enough away that, while you're actually playing,
right,
versus you're on your own. But yeah,
okay.
so.
Okay.
And like I said, you can't, if you're a football player and you're super tired, you can come out for a play. And
yeah.
You can't do
tap
that.
your head.
Yeah.
And tennis, you can't tap. You gotta play.
Exactly. And like I said, it's often in extreme heat because even this time of year when they're playing, they're intentionally playing in Australia because it's hot there right now. That's why they're not playing in America right now.
How do you think instant replay has changed the game?
So by the time I started watching it, it was already there.
Okay.
So I can't really say before, but what I will say is even that, not to add to some confusion here, but that is one thing that even confuses me. And the reason I say that is when I first started watching it, they had it like in a lot of other sports where they had challenges. So you got, I think it was like 3 challenges per set. But
okay.
If you got 2 of them right or something, you could keep going until you missed another one, something like that.
Okay.
But now most of the tournaments have gone to where electronic scoring, so to speak, where the calls, whether in or out, are made entirely electronically. So they don't even have like the player or the scorers down the line calling whether it's in and out. It's all electronic, whether it's in or out. So they still have the replays, but basically you can't challenge it because it's already being called the same way it would be called in the challenge. But the reason it confuses me is I don't think every tournament does that. Like some are still a little different. I think in some you can challenge still, and some you can't. And that's kind of been slowly changing here and there. So I'm not even entirely sure exactly where we're at with that.
Okay. Let me ask you this: that person that's on the chair, in the middle of the court,
the umpire.
Yep, sure. Let's call in an umpire. 2-part question.
Okay.
What is its purpose there? And 2, why do they always look so pompous?
Well, the second part is probably because they can't show favoritism, of course, either way.
They look so pompous every single time. No.
They do, but as you can imagine, not only a matter of, like I said, not being able to pick sides, but also having to have the personality to deal with the players complaining and chewing them out, but then just sit there and take it, basically. So, but for the first part of your question, in reality, now that we've gone to all the electronic systems,
they're useless.
Not entirely, but less useful because they're not making those calls.
They're only 25% effective for the game.
Probably, yeah, because basically, for the most part, what they're doing is now there's some judgment calls to be made. Like, for example, just in a match last night, the ball can only bounce obviously one time on the side of the court, and the person has to hit it. If it bounces the second time, you lose the point. But there was just last night, there was a controversy because the ball in slow motion, it very clearly bounced a second time before the player hit it. But the umpire didn't call it right away. So the opposing player continued playing. Well, as soon as the rally ended, the opposing player went up to the umpires like that was a double bounce. But the rule was like the opposing player has to stop right away and challenge it, basically. And she didn't do that. And that wasn't really even her fault because it was just kind of reaction. But basically the umpire could have, right off the bat, even without the players complaining, the umpire themselves could have stopped it and called it, hey, that double bounced. So some judgment calls like that. There's also, there's technically a serve clock. That's almost never enforced, but you technically only have 25 seconds to serve.
Of course
you do. And there are occasionally people that will abuse that. And not so much by taking way longer, but by consistently taking a couple extra seconds. So the umpire can give them a warning, and if they continue to do it, they can dock them a point. And they can also dock them points for, unsportsmanlike stuff, things like that. So
that's messed up. You got to dock a point and then you got to replay more. That's oh man.
It wouldn't be replaying though. How that works?
Not replay. You got to play. You got to keep playing.
Well, for example, like let's say it would never happen on the first point of the match, but let's say it happened on the first point of the match or before we even ever started. If I did something terrible, the umpire would give me a warning first. But if we still didn't play and I did something again, then even without playing, he would give you a point. So we haven't even played yet, and you're winning 15 love.
Man, get out of here.
If I do it a third time, it's a game, not just a point. It's a game. Next time, set. Finally, you can be just disqualified. Yeah.
Okay.
So they serve some purpose, but plus the crowd gets loud in between points cheering. Sometimes they go too far. The umpire has to ask them to be quiet, things like that.
Again, pompous.
I don't disagree, but but they did.
I mean, you're not wrong, but
right.
They're there.
And again, they serve more of a purpose back in the day. Of course, I'm sure it's kind of like baseball. We're probably gonna get to a point where we don't need the umpires there. But even if we get to the electronic calling, the umpire will probably still physically be there, right?
Yeah.
So it's kind of like that. Like even though 90% of the calls being made, we don't need the umpire for, but there's a few that we do, and will most likely, I would think, keep the umpire there physically, regardless.
Okay. All right. It's not bad. I mean, I got it for the most part. It's going to take me a while.
For sure, it takes time.
It's not like I'm going to be sitting here. I'm going to be like, "Ooh, did you guys watch the Australian Open?" No, I'm not going to do that.
You're going to be setting your alarm at 3:30 a.m. for those matches.
Hell, I am. I already wake up early enough, bro. I don't need to be waking up even earlier. Right. I'm up at 4:45 every morning, dude.
That is too early. Unless it's to get up and watch tennis, it's too early.
Yeah, my wife says the same thing. She actually says like, "You're psychotic." I'm like, "Thanks, babe. I love you too."
Right. She says it out of love, I'm sure.
Yeah, I'm sure she says that out of love. Yeah. Let's go with that. So this has been very illuminating.
Yes.
I got a couple more questions for you.
All
right. Because obviously this is what we do now. We got to learn new sports, right? We gotta be open to this.
Exactly. And plus now you can classify this as an educational podcast.
Oh.
Right?
Well, yes, you're right. Look at you. Okay.
Not just a hat rack up here.
No. Just a hat rack. Is where's that one? Is that from the Winston-Salem?
Winston-Salem flight. Yeah, just got it in the mail yesterday.
Is that you bought that from National Hat Day?
Actually, ironically, I bought a couple hats around that time, but none of them were actually on National.
Oh, you gotta be kidding me! You went around there. You went on the 14th, skipped the 15 , went straight to the 16.
Yeah, but I'm going to call it my National Hat Day hat. So
let's go with that. Sounds good. Correct. All right. Okay, so let me see here. Let's take a look here. I'm looking at these questions that I have here. We talked about the rankings. We talked about the Grand Slam. In your opinion, and again, this is your own biased opinion, okay? This is your opinion.
Okay.
Who is the greatest tennis player of all time?
I will say Roger Federer. Now, there is controversy about that, of course, because...
Why is that?
Because similar to other sports, it's like, what do you go off of? And if you want to strictly go off 100% just by the numbers, then Novak Djokovic beats him in a lot of the stuff just by the numbers.
Yeah.
But so that's why I say like a lot of people will say Djokovic just because
numbers.
He's got more numbers, and that's hard to argue. But especially since they were similar eras. But their eras did slightly differ.
Mm-hmm.
And for the most part, Djokovic got a lot, not all of them, but a lot of his extra numbers in a weaker era. And then you can say things like, well, even head-to-head, Djokovic beat Federer more head-to-head, which is true. But again, a lot of their matches were when Federer was a little past his prime, playing Djokovic while he was in his prime, and it was still pretty close to 50-50, things like that. The third person that gets mentioned a lot is obviously Rafael Nadal, whose numbers are also very similar.
He just retired, didn't he?
He just did, yeah, a couple months ago.
Rafa.
Yeah. But to me, while he's still a legend and one of the best players of all time, I think amongst those three, he's pretty easily
the number three.
Place. Yeah. And to me, the main reason why is he was so flipping good on clay. Like nobody could beat him.
Okay.
Period on clay. But everywhere else, still very good.
Just not as dominant.
Correct. So his numbers are a little skewed just because he could not be beat on clay. Whereas Djokovic and Federer, absolute top notch everywhere, basically. But just to throw in one name that isn't in these more modern era is Bjorn Borg. Now, most people probably wouldn't call him the best from the previous era, but his numbers are close to the best anyway. And he played in the time, I think 60s, 70s.
Yeah.
When traveling was not as easily. So like a lot of these Grand Slams, he just willingly did not choose to play because he didn't want to travel to wherever. So, of course, he didn't win as many tournaments and stuff because of that. But so I'm going to throw his name out just to get a plug for his name.
What about women's?
Women's, I think there's obviously some similar arguments that can be made for different things, but I think that's a lot clearer that Serena Williams is the greatest of all time. She
was dominant.
Yeah, dominant for so long.
Yeah.
Even she's got the numbers. She's got the name, so to speak, of just everybody knows how dominant. She was, and like I said, she played until she was about 40. And even though it's more common these days for these players to play longer, but even these days, most of the women will be retired by 30-ish. And she not only played till 40, but was still winning Grand Slams till about 35, 36.
Okay. All right. Okay. I appreciate you teaching me.
Anytime.
And this is now, I am going to go into my podcast section, and I am going to put educational.
I like it. I'm glad I could help.
Simply because you taught me something, and then the next person that I'm going to bring in, they're going to teach me about their sport, and then we're going to keep going. And this is how this is going to happen from now on. I love it.
Exactly. Yeah. Yeah. Like I said, I don't get a chance to talk about tennis much, so I'll take every opportunity I can.
I want you to know that we did talk about a little bit about tennis on the Dad Hat Chronicle Sports Show, by the way, every Tuesday and Thursdays, 9 p.m. Eastern time on YouTube.
All good stuff.
All good stuff, right? We talked about it, and we said, I was like, hey, the Australian is going on right now. Just want you guys to know. And then that was it.
Hey, that's more than I would have expected.
You would expect it, right? So there you go. I just want you to know that I did talk about it. I gave you a shout, but since you don't watch anymore because you're too good for us, I'm just saying,
it's past my bedtime.
Oh, get out of here! It's 8:30, right? 9:30, and you still up with me?
No, I don't mean right now. It's past my bedtime.
Oh,
I mean, when I don't watch shows, sometimes it's because it's past my bedtime.
Man, get out of here! You're so full of it. I don't want to hear it.
Well, I would say I get up early, which is true, but after you just telling me what time you get up, I'm not going to use that as an excuse. So
no. Yeah, I get up at 4:45 at the gym by 5:15.
Good for you. Good for you.
I got to do something because I eat like a dad.
See, I do that. I just don't do the gym. So,
all right. Anything you want to plug right now, my friend? This is your chance. Like your socials, your podcast, anything.
Appreciate you. I got the Up to Chat podcast. It's kind of in a spot right now where I don't do it on a regular basis. I just kind of do it here and there right now. But it's about all sports and stuff. Just kind of been on what's in season, tennis included. And then for social media, then I'm at PUK32 Ellers on most of them, so you can follow me there.
Okay. And then this is all socials, or is it strictly like Instagram?
That's Instagram Twitter. And Twitter or X. Yeah. Those are, other than Facebook, those are the only two I got right now. Actually I have a Threads, which is the same thing. So I'm just not very active on there yet. I'm usually a little behind on getting to the new social media. So I usually almost always eventually get there. I'm just way after everybody else gets there.
I just want you to know that I am following you on on Threads, and you're not following me. On
Nah,
Threads.
I'm following you in there. Am I
No?
not?
No.
Well, hold that. I'm
It
pretty
says
sure.
because it's not following me. It says
Well,
right there,
I will say
Michael A.B. Sellers.
that's me. That's me. But
That's you.
I will say I'm not very active. Like I said, I'm not very
I
active
know
on there.
you have not posted anything,
But exactly.
and I appreciate that you put right there in Spanish. Okay, all right, I got you. La familia es todo, pero el béisbol también es bueno. Okay, all right, bro. I got you, homie. I
is that
got
not
you.
awesome or what?
Was pretty good. I'll give you that, man. All right now.
Yeah, I got that when I was watching Breaking Bad, and one of the scenes, Hector said "La familia es todo." I love that, but then I needed to add a little more truth to it. So,
Yep, I like it. I like it. Guys, make sure you guys are following Mike Sellers on the socials, Twitter, Instagram, and then also make sure he's on Threads. He hasn't posted anything, but he's on Threads. Okay, just make sure you give him a follow. He has 53 followings at the time of this recording. So let's get those numbers up. And also make sure you guys check out his podcast, the Up to Chat podcast, wherever that you listen your podcast. Okay, Mike, dude, I'm serious. Thank you so much for teaching me about tennis. You also taught me that I can change my my podcast now to educational, so I might just get more listeners because of that.
well, you're welcome, and I'm glad I could help, and I'm glad I had this opportunity to talk about tennis.
There you go. And then as far as the Data Chronicles, I am a lot more active right now on Blue Sky, on Threads, and Instagram, as well as YouTube. Just look up Data Chronicles podcast. Make sure you guys subscribe. I do post a podcast there as well. I do some couple of videos here and there, so make sure you guys are following as well. We will see you guys in the next episode. What sport are we going to talk about? I don't know. We'll see. But someone's going to teach me about their sport, and I appreciate that. So, thanks, guys.
Thank you.